Okay, I suppose we better get going. Okay, lecture 11. So you may have seen in your email, the trip was approved. I talked to a couple different people about buying tickets. I'm not impressed with their services so far. We're giving everybody till the end of the day to get back to me. If not, I'll have to figure it out on my own. We've got preferences. They threw out things like red-eye flights and when you want to land, where do you want to stay? Do you guys have any thoughts about those things? Red-eye flights, is it a bad thing, good thing, don't care?
No,
Sleeping on the plane?
sleeping on the plane.
Red-eye night, we like leave from like 11 o'clock at night and you have 6 hours to sleep on the plane.
Like in your seat.
Yeah.
Oh, that sounds horrific.
No.
No.
Stay away, so that you get there.
I don't care. It doesn't.
They can't be.
I wasn't impressed with I talked to somebody on Saturday, I wasn't impressed with their pricing, it was compared to what I can find online. But the thing about online is they got all those hidden fees after they get you on the ticket. So I don't know if she was quoting full, but they're supposed to get back to me today with a plan, I don't know, so. We'll try to make it work here as quickly as possible, I'm kind of. You want my business, why don't you call me back? But, I guess that's just not the way life works. Today, we're gonna do a video for a little while, then we're gonna go out measuring the barns. The idea is we're gonna play with those measurements next week. We may start that today. But basically filling out those sheets we played with last time for the milking barn and the calf barn. First exam scheduled a week from Thursday, and I still haven't scheduled that udder singe. Hopefully I'll get that done. What? Is it or no? Is it Wednesday? Is that, sorry. I've been talking about exams, so here, 6th. So, okay, so the date is right. I got something right, so, okay. So does everybody feel comfortable with what we talked about last time? Questions? Another thing that came up with the travel agent, they're like, do you want travel insurance or being able to move the flight? And that was like an extra $200 per plane ticket. I thought we take our chances and we self-insure because it's probably easier to eat 2 tickets than to buy an extra $200 for everybody else. So,
I always thought the insurance was like $30 extra.
that's what you said. If I wanted guaranteed refundable flights, and again, she was quoting prices way higher than I'm seeing on the internet. And I'm like,
Sounds like a rip off.
okay, and it's like, well, there's no flight. What do you mean there's no flights there? Well, you can go out on one plane airline and come back on another, and like, why can't I get a round trip on the farm show? Calling somebody back, they never came, called me back, so I said, before things got busy at farm show, I started calling. And I got somebody in the Midwest or something that, oh, that office is, they don't work on Saturdays. Okay. So they're supposed to call me today. They have not, as of yet, not called me. So. You're probably talking right now, it's like 2 hours to Chicago. And then probably 4 or 5 hours to LA. So there's a layover in there somewhere. I'll have to take a good look at it again and I'll see what we got. If you want, we can take a look at it in lab, see what's available, and you can express your opinions. See what's still available. Okay, so doing last time, you guys feel comfortable with that form? We're gonna be using it today in lab. Most part, okay, let's try it again. I'll give you a mechanical example and a natural ventilation. Everybody have blanks and need blanks. And we need both sides. So these are our second examples in class. So try it on your own and we'll see what we come up with. And I assume using your phone for calculators. If I turn it on. Yep. Okay, we got a barn, mechanically ventilated, 100 feet long, 32 feet wide, and 8 foot high. Inside, a rectangular solid. You need to know what to do with it from there. So 100 feet long, 32 feet wide, 8 feet high. So basically steps 1, 2, 3, and 4. So focusing on the B there for inlets and outlets, how do we do? Flow of information making sense? So we need to ventilate a whole lot more in the summertime than we do the wintertime. And that has a lot to do with pressure or temperature differential. Cold air coming in can absorb a lot more heat than warm air can. So. And then we have to size, given the speeds of which, how things are moving through the openings. We have to size our openings to accommodate that flow of information, flow of air. So the right size, the right speed gets it done. So let's try the natural ventilation one. So barn that's 240 feet long, 100 feet wide, and 16 feet high. I'm asking you to give a shot at the math on your own. Give it a fire. Yes. So focusing on steps 1 through 4, and probably your 3A, 1 mile an hour. How big the openings need to be. Everybody getting the flow of information? Board of reading. Any questions about how to fill out these forms? So we'll do one for the milking barn this afternoon and one for the calf barn. We'll take a look at the other barns and how they're ventilated as we move through. So we're talking about mechanical ventilation. There's lots of different types. We start to play with things. So you got inlets and outlets. We want them planned, driving force spans. And we could either have a positive pressure system or a negative pressure system. We're gonna talk about tunnel ventilation. Similar to cross ventilation, tunnel ventilation. Is that gonna be positive or negative? Anybody have a guess? So we're using fans to draw air all the way through the barn, starting at one end of the barn. And then drawing the air all the way through and going out the other end of the barn, usually on the long axis. So what is that gonna be? Gonna be negative. The air fans are pushing out. Driving force is that pressure differential, the fans. So the outlet is what? Fans are the outlet. The inlet would be at the far end. And we open that up. Hopefully everything goes the way it's supposed to. So tunnel ventilation, there's a real good discussion on the Penn State website. This morning. So they haven't negated it. They did a lot of good drawings, and a lot of good discussion on that. This is a lot to do with retrofitting smaller barns and how that all gets sorted out. So tunnel ventilation, pretty straightforward. You got fans on one end of the long axis of the barn. We got two fans there. They're gonna draw air from here, take the whole length and exhaust it out. So if that's gonna work, what do you have to have happen? So the straw has got to be sealed all the way down. So anybody tried to drink from a holy straw? It requires a little bit more effort. So you need a seal all the way down. And that could be a challenge, especially in older barns. So you've got the exhaust fans, especially down south, you've got lots of them. You've got some sort of inlet area, and we want that inlet area to be dispersed across the whole barn, so the air for the entire barn moves. We don't have any dead spots. If we focus the inlet just to the middle, we get dead spots in the corners. We want the whole inlet to kind of sweep through and get to those exhaust fans at the other end. So what happens if we've got some sort of building where we can't spread those inlets around the whole end of the barn? Maybe we got cinder blocks or something on an older barn and we can't really get rid of them or open them up as easily as we might a wood structure. So we need some sort of deflector to move air here. Our main opening is here. We've got a little opening. Most of the air is going to come in, and you're going to potentially have dead spots in the corner. You're going to have a lot of air down the alleyway. You want, at least in the barn I grew up with, the rows the cows were facing out. We want some air going across their noses. So they're breathing fresh air if we can. So thinking about where those inlets are and designing a system that's going to allow that air to move. Air is always going to run the shortest distance it can. By adding some sort of deflector, we can push that air out over the cows and not just ventilate the alleyway behind the cows. So once that air gets moving in a direction, it should go the shortest route. So retrofitting tunnel ventilation, the challenge becomes if you got a barn that's got something built at the end of the barn, you've got silos or silo room, or you got a barn cleaner room, or you're up against a dirt mound or something like that. What happens if we can't bring in air just at the end? So we can't for whatever reason, so we have to bring it in the side. If we just use those side openings and just let the air flow where it is, that triangle there is that dead air space. Now, there's probably no animals there, and that's probably not a bad thing. But depending on what we're doing, we might be able to modify some things. So creating a tunnel or moving the air in kind of a tunnel or a box to the center before it's released. So spreading it out, moving things around, trying to minimize that dead space. Again, it might not be too critical if it's just their butts. The air, especially for those animals on the end there, is going to be pretty extensive. So what happens if we have some sort of stone wall barn or cinder block barn and we can't put holes through? We can take advantage of these unused hay mows. Since everybody's going to haylage, we're not putting in as many small squares up. Is there an opportunity with the wood structure up top to create an opening where the air comes in? So we're creating a box thing here. We're above that stone wall there, or cinder block wall, allowing that air to come in. We want this to be a square from a fluid dynamic standpoint. If we just do a sloping one, we're going to reduce the cross section of that opening. So not going to be harder, the smaller straw to suck that air in. So this is the case where the air's coming in on the second floor, it's bringing it down, and then it's running the length of the barn, and it's going out again on the second floor. So what's the challenge with that? The ones on the ends, the air's going up toward the end, the ones on the end, there might be dead spaces down low in these corners. So we may have to bring that air down a little bit or reduce that opening a little bit so we get those corners taken care of. So this is a barn doing that. So you got that opening there. Above the garage door, you got cinder block walls. It's easier to create the inlet on the second floor than it was to worry about busting out that end wall, which is full of structural support. So both ends, we want that square construction there. The plenum to get the full movement of air. If we've got that angle there, especially if it's right next to the fan, this is going to be a starved area. We might only get half the use of the fan at full capacity. What happens if we've got a milk house at the other end of the barn? And for whatever reason, the other end's blocked. How do we get air out? How do we use our fans to pull stuff through? So, natural tendency, if we've got air fans on either side, it's going to short circuit to the side. We get a dead space in there. One way around it is a small inlet coming in from the attic that should push that dead space out. So we've got the big openings at the other end of the barn, but just a little opening here and there can help get rid of that dead space. This is a challenge. The barn up, you can't stove it because you got all the fans on one part of the L and air. You got your parlor right there, open in two directions. The air tends to short circuit the corners, trying to go is the shortest distance it can. That potentially creates dead air down in that one corner. One way to get rid of that is to divide your inlet space. So you got some here, and then your tunnel ventilation should work going across there. I think the way they handle it, they don't have inlets on that corner because they have box stalls down there, is they put a whole bunch of fans on the outside. Downside of that is poles are generally less expensive from an electricity standpoint than fans. So if you're thinking about going around the corner or an L-shaped barn, there's a couple different ways to think about it. So this was a barn just outside Syracuse, and L-shaped barn, you got barn wing going out this way to the barn cleaner, and then another wing going down to the bulk of the cows. So the far end of the building from here is where all the fans are. They're up on the second story, pulling air out. They've got inlets on this end, and then they created these inlets pretty small, about 2 by 3, for the front of the cows. So you have a flow of air in the summertime in front of the cows on this side of the barn. So putting that opening in, if you're thinking about that L-shaped barn, how might we most effectively ventilate? Instead of trying to go around the corner, what might we do? 2 tunnels. So where would we put those 2 tunnels? This way and this way. So we had a student here a while back who had a dry cow barn like this, and it needed to be ventilated. It was dungeon. So it became a special remote project. Suggestions how to ventilate it. So if we're thinking about it, we might put fans on both ends and pull out that way. So where does this put the inlets? So down here. So hopefully we go in, hopefully we go out. This becomes the challenge or potential dead spot. Another approach is ventilating off the corner. So we're pulling 2 arms together to one exhaust system. So tunneling from 2 entrances to one area of exit. The challenge on this particular farm was where's electricity, and that's if you're adding fans, that's not a easy outlet extension. You're going to need some amps there. So they had silos all on this side of the building, so exhausting was a challenge on that corner. So one of the things they did historically is trying to go around the corner. They had those curtains that you see at like warehouses and stuff to keep air on one side and air on the other. So the cows had to learn to walk through it to get to the feed, but it sort of kept the air moving. And it was probably a desire to get rid of those curtains. So these were the suggestions to handle that L-shaped barn. Everybody understand tunnel ventilation, a specialized version of a negative pressure system. The other one we'll talk about is cross ventilation. So instead of going the long axis here to here, we're rotating 90 degrees and we're using those short walls on either side. So air comes in one side, moves over the cows, and then moves out the other side. So this usually doesn't interfere with garage doors and things like that. So there's probably easier to spread things out for those inlets as we move through. So the challenge is getting the air down in some of these barns, especially if you've got a triangle opening at the top. Air is going to want to take the shortest route, the easiest route, and going through the cows is a lot of rocks in the stream. The water's going to want to go over and around. So you'll see in the video we talk about this afternoon, is a lot of people will add baffles to force that air down. So try to get the air down on the stalls as it goes across the exhaust fans. Again, a negative pressure, try to get that down. We don't need to ventilate the alley per se, but we need to get down to the cows, need to get there. So these baffles can be temporary, like curtain material, they just drop down. And we can bring them back up in the winter time. Or they can be permanent hard structures that force that air down onto the cows. So passing under the baffles becomes the challenge. So they'll talk more about that this afternoon. This is where I grew up. We use dairy. So it's tunnel barn. You've got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 4-foot fans there. So pulls the length of the barn. The barn's about 8 feet high, 30 feet wide, and 200 feet long, 46 stalls on each side, 92 fills the barn. Cows. So what?
How many did you have?
Usually 92, and ran dry cows in and out. The guy who rents it at the moment has not got it to capacity at the moment. So usually 92 milking cows. It's kind of necessary with supporting at 1.3 different families. So, so what do we need to ventilate this barn? What are we looking at? So what is our cubic feet? 48,000. So we need 48,000. How many 4-foot fans does that usually account for? What's typical for a 4-foot fan? What do we say? CFM for a 4-foot fan? $20,000 per fan, it's 48,000. How many fans do we need?
2.5.
2.5, 3. Possibly, if you really want to get 52 4-foot fans in a 3 fan, we add 5 to get the job done. So why do you think the difference is with that versus the theoretical construct? Do you think to get the job done, we need 5 fans?
Because one might have been broke.
One might have been broke, not usually. Not usually. The 5 got the job done. You got a good, nice, good breeze, probably 2-3 mile an hour wind going the length of the barn. I told you this barn was built in 1938. Does that tell you anything? Drafts. So there's lots of holes all over the place. So we were losing efficiency. We went through, we did our best, but there's lots of cracks here and there. The cracks were short circuiting the system, reducing the efficiency of the fans. So we need twice as many fans to overcome all those leaks. So it's probably cheaper to pay the fans than to reply with the whole interior to fit all of the holes or get all the holes fixed. So those, if you, about midway up the barn, milk house is coming off the side here. On the other side of that is the main entrance. That's where we brought the feed wagon up. We dumped here into a cart, and that cart went around the barn. In the summertime, if you open that door to bring that feed cart in to distribute the feed, you lost all of your CFM. The whole far wing of the barn there went dead. So trying to seal that tunnel, making sure we've got that straw from one end to the other intact is what we needed to. But yeah, you open the silo doors, you open the entrance door on the side there. You lost a lot of the CFM, the power to drive, to pull the length of the barn. So having extra fans covered some of the deficiencies, the leaks in the system. That's a barn 2 miles down the road. This was the home farm, and then we were renting heifer barn 2 miles down the road. I don't even know if it's still there. So tunnel ventilation, cross ventilation, negative, fans are the driving force. Outlets are the fans, inlets are hopefully planned. So they bring in air at all the points necessary to make sure that there are no dead spots, that there's a flow of air, a wall of air going down through the barn. So how many does it get done? So we did that already. So there's the 5 fans, covers. So another thing to deal with a leaky barn is a positive pressure system, pushing the air in and then letting it bleed out through the holes. Yeah, you need some plan, but using those leaks, especially in a calf barn, a positive pressure system is probably more efficient in moving air out, especially if there's a lot of leaky barns, especially the ones built over the mid of the last century tend to be pretty leaky going through. So positive pressure systems, what do we know about those? Maybe open ends. The outlets don't have to be all at the opposite end of the fans. As long as you got them spaced out. There was a nice system at Michigan State where they had basically quadrants that fans were pulling out of 4 quadrants, and they had air coming in from inlets and outlets spaced all around the barn. So that was always a nice barn to be in the summer. I don't think I'd want to pay the electric bill, but so positive pressure, we're pushing air in. So the inlet is what? Fans, and then the outlets, hopefully we have them planned forward. So I've referenced this. I forgot to bring it over. There's a Midwest Plan Service number 7. I think that we've got an update since then. It is currently available from Gordon's Dairyman's, where I found it this morning. It used to be from the Midwest Plan Service, but I'm guessing it's a little out of date. But it's got a lot of good basics in it. They're about pretty much everything about putting together a dairy freestall, ventilation included. So thinking about a positive pressure system, this is where we usually use positive pressures in calf barns. So we have a breath of fresh air. Anytime somebody does a presentation on ventilation, they usually go with that cliche breath of fresh air. So this is from University of Wisconsin, Madison. So we're dealing with natural ventilation. We either have the wind driving it, or we've got enough cows in there that are going to generate enough heat that are going to move that air out. We don't usually get that with calves. So, and if we're doing natural ventilation, we've got a whole lot more volume that we need to have. As you'll see with our naturally ventilated barns, we need this height on the sides, as we mentioned at the end of class, to allow for that opening to be big enough to move 1 mile an hour through the barn and fully ventilate it. So air comes in based on wind. It's going to go out the other spots. So you've got the high pressure on the wind side, pushing that air out to the low pressure on the other side. Rain and snow, or rains and sun control, having some overhangs makes a difference. So what do we know about our stalls up at the dairy when things start to warm up? On a nice sunny day. They don't use those outside stalls on the west side of the barn. They're too hot. So for a couple hours a day, we are way overstocked. Those are no longer desirable things there, so having some overhang keeps the rain from splashing in their face and potentially keeps some of the sun out. When we're putting together ventilation systems, we got to consider the separation if they're going to be naturally ventilated. If we put these buildings too close together, what happens? It's going to skip over the next barn and we're not going to ventilate it all. So we have to have enough space where the wind is going to come down and enter that barn. So that's one of the reasons that naturally ventilated barns are spaced farther apart. Not just because we like to exercise our cows, but we need to get that ventilation down. You got to get the next barn out of what's called the wind shadow. So your wind shadow with a barn might be, you get out in the Midwest, the only place you see trees are around the houses, right? Because you want to block the wind hitting the house. You might have a cornfield, so that's a temporary thing. When we went to grapes, they have two mountains that focus the wind. They can't get it from the southwest. They can only get it from the northeast and then the south. Coming through because of that big mountain there, the whole area is in a wind shadow, depending on which way the wind is blowing. So thinking about which way the wind's going to blow, and they'll talk about in the video this afternoon, you can't always predict the way the wind's going to blow. So figuring that out, where your shadows are, where your prevailing winds are, can we take advantage of them? So we got that summer wind, summer places you can count on wind coming from specific directions, specific times of the year, making sure our buildings are far enough apart to make sure that we can get wind there. The problem with calves is if you got a big barn there, they're going to probably not ventilate in a way that's going to keep the calves healthy, especially in the fall and the spring. When, like what we're dealing with right now, Saturday was what, 10 degrees to start the day, it was 50 degrees by the end of the day. So coming up with a system that's going to help keep these calves healthy, and we have to go to some sort of mechanical system in the winter time, and we usually go with a positively ventilated system, which we'll see in lab in an hour and 10 minutes. So we'll see you up there. We'll talk more about the principles of naturally ventilated system or mechanically ventilated positive pressure systems for calves on Wednesday.